guys.
To this episode of Skeptic and Ranting, where tonight we are talking with Cindi Lincoln and having an interview about her experiences being married to Kent Hovind, helping run Dinosaur Adventure Land, and
no tomatoes, please.
only love, and how she found her way out. So join James W., myself, Amy Newman, and our special guest host, Cindi, for what's sure to be a water-ful experience. I want to thank everyone out there for joining us on the intertubes. I don't know how they get it through there. If you're feeling fancy, please don't forget to like, follow, or subscribe. Then hit that bell icon so you can get reminders to join our live streams or see new videos like this. At the end of this premiere, we will be heading over to the Skeptic and Ranting Discord server, the link of which is in the description below for the after show. And lastly, we want to send love, lots and lots of love, to our Patreons over at patreon.com/Amy.
We love you guys.
Woohoo! Including awesome Patreons like K.O. Champ, Oz from the Atheist Roundtable, Ian Davenport, a grumpy old cuss,
thanks, Ian.
Diana Smith,
thanks, Grumpy,
Pat Lowinger, Dale Pastel,
Diana, Pat,
Gar, Scott
thanks, Dale,
Duke, Regos, and Rachel.
Gar, El Duque, Regos, and last but not least, Rachel.
That's right, baby. Thank you to all of our Patreons. You are who enable us to make even more fun content, along with our mods and, of course, viewers like you. So with that, we are going to hand it over to Cindi to introduce herself. Cindi, welcome to Skeptic and Ranting. Lovely to have you on the show, and the floor is all yours.
Why, thank you, madam. Thank you very much. Well, it depends what you mean by skeptic. Skeptic of, I should have been more skeptical. Let's put it that way.
Skepticism is a good thing.
I think we can all appreciate that in a lot of the situations that we get ourselves into sometimes.
Yes. You mean I got myself into it? Yes.
You've been a Christian since 1984, you said.
Yes. So in that regard, I'm no longer a skeptic. But in other regards, like if you walk up to me and say, "Hi, I'm a Christian," I'm a skeptic. Christians aren't always Christians.
And so
that's true.
Let's go back. How long would you consider yourself being a Christian?
It was 1984. And since this is a skeptic show, I don't know if you want me to go ahead and share that, but I can share how that happened.
You can, absolutely.
Honestly, we are always interested in that sort of thing, and feel free. Once again, we're just here to learn more.
So when I was a little girl, my dad used to take me to national parks, Yosemite, the Grand Tetons, and I saw the beauty of creation. And so I thought, well, there's a good God that made it. But then when you drive back home and you get into town and you see how people have screwed things up, and it's not so pretty when you get into town. So I knew, okay, there's a God, he's good, and we have screwed it up. But I was always taught growing up that God is not knowable, that, you know, I didn't even know if he was in the sky. He was not knowable. And
You
I
were
always
raised
thought, well,
as like a deist almost in your younger years. You were
yeah,
raised as a deist would be someone who believes in a vague notion of a God, but not any specifically God.
right. And in fact, I was a little bit perturbed because I'm like, how are you going to hold us accountable for our actions if you don't even come down here and tell us what you want?
That is true.
I was a little annoyed about that. And it's like, how are you supposed to know? Do you just follow your heart? Is it a vote about what's wrong, what's right? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody at my work, when I was in college, probably about 22, I don't know why, but I asked her, what do you do to get to heaven? I think because she used to read her Bible at work.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, because somehow I had this idea that I'd have to go to Africa as a missionary. I'd have to stop sleeping with my boyfriend. And I was not interested in either of those. And so I guess heaven isn't for me. So I asked her, what do you have to do? And she said, do you believe that Jesus is the Son of God? And I said, I don't know. I've heard that. She said, do you believe Jesus died on the cross for your sins? I guess so. I've heard that. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then she said, do you believe you rose again on the third day? And I said, I don't know. I guess so. And she said, that's it. And I went, what? I said, show me where in the Bible does it say that? And because I'm like, I don't have to stop sleeping with my boyfriend. I don't have to go to Africa as a missionary. So she pointed me to the book of Romans. I started reading. And sure enough, it says faith, just believing in something you can't see. But nothing really changed. I didn't really believe yet. I just read in the Bible that that's indeed what it said.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day I was walking down the sidewalk and I remember exactly where I was. And the idea hit me about AD and BC, before Christ and after Christ. And I realized that Jesus was history. It was history. It wasn't pie in the sky. And that was the hour I first believed. Something happened where I suddenly believed, oh my gosh, God had come to earth.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, then I had to wrestle with, well, but what about the Bible? Hasn't it been changed by men? Is it reliable? Is it some craziness, you know? And so yeah, long story. So there's a 40-year story after that, but that's
no,
how I got saved.
We are, that's what we're here for. In fact,
We love it.
So my question then would be, and did you said was 1984 still the same time that you were talking about that experience happened?
Yes, that was when I first got converted, and I started, well, I wouldn't call it converted. I was still myself. That's when I first believed.
Started to pique interest in theology.
I actually transitioned from, well, I don't know that God's invisible to, oh my gosh, God came to earth.
Yeah.
And then I would read the Bible and try and figure it out. And I was wrestling with, is this reliable? Is this true? And Josh McDowell was a big part of that. I don't know if you've seen the book called More Than a Carpenter or heard of Josh McDowell. His son now.
Definitely know Josh or heard of Josh McDowell.
Yeah, his son Sean McDowell is doing apologetics as well. But and in fact, Pelagia rebutted this idea recently, and I'm still mulling it around in my head. Pelagia has rebutted a lot of things that I have believed, but one of the big things that Josh McDowell taught, he came to my church was the apostles and how they had all died a martyr's death, and that they wouldn't have done so if it was a lie. That was something that helped me really see, oh my gosh, this isn't a lie. And then just slowly I would come across a certain verse or whatever. Like, I remember one time I read the verse where it says, if you bring your gift to the altar and there you remember that someone has aught against you, leave your gift at the altar, go make it up with whoever you have the offense with, and then come offer your gift. And I remember thinking, the day I put my sister's head through the window, my sister and I haven't talked in a very long time. And so I called up my sister and I said, I'm sorry. And then the other time, let him who steals steal no more. And so I took back everything I had stolen from the restaurant I worked at.
Oh, so boy.
Yeah.
I think we all do things that I don't think it. I'm trying to think how I would phrase this. When I worked at Burger King, I supplied myself with food. That's how I look at it. Supply with energy, so give energy to others. But okay, so 1984, when you were getting kind of a realization maybe of Christ or closer towards that, were you leaning in a denomination? Was it
That's
or I guess that would be
I was led in the direction of non-denominational because I had been told, and I had been in some, grandma churches where, you just sit there quietly and you stand up when they tell you to stand up and you sit down and you're sleeping the whole time. And, but I actually was not.
Sounds like some of the churches I went to.
Yeah. I didn't want to go to church. For some reason, I had this feeling that if I went to churches, it would be man's opinion. And I wasn't interested in getting brainwashed by any man. And so I was not going to church. When I told you that Josh McDowell came to my church, that was after. So there was this girl that was in my geography class. And we were learning about evolution and geography together. And she was telling me about how it wasn't right and stuff like that. And anyway, she said, you have to go to church. And I said, no, I'm not going to no church. And she said, you have to go to church. And I liked her. She was sweet. I loved her. So I went. And the first time I went to church, I'm like, I love this. It was a good church. Okay. They're not all boring, bad churches. And then she said, you have to go to Bible study. And no. I don't want to go. All girls? Are you kidding me? Why would I want to hang out with girls? And, but again, I went because I liked her and I loved it. It's like, wow, girl friends. Because I just liked guys at
those
that time.
Two words can coexist without cat fights, right?
And the other funny thing, so she took me to her church, which was non-denominational, and pretty much I stayed non-denominational. Coming to Alabama was the first time I'd been in a Baptist church. And in fact, so this was all in California. In California, there's a hippie movement, okay? We're rebelling against the whole, I shine my shoes for Sunday, but on Monday, I stab you in the back. And so when I came to Alabama, I realized I just entered what I spent the last 30 years rebelling against. The shine your shoes on Sunday thing.
And can I ask, so let's talk about that for a second. You said you went from California to Alabama.
Yes.
When and why?
So this is an interesting thing. Remember I said I didn't want to be a Christian at first because I didn't want to be a missionary in Africa. Okay. Well, once I started believing, that changed. I wanted to be a missionary. I wanted really bad to be a missionary. I guess there's an era of competition in the church. Like, you got to be super Christian. I don't know if it was that, or if it was really, I just wanted to give my utmost for his highest, or maybe a little bit of both.
You got to be on fire for God.
I wanted to give it all. And I was in missionary bridge school when I met my first husband, only to find out that he didn't have a heart for missions. And so basically I was pulled from the field. But it never died. And in 2016, I found myself free. My husband was on a restraining order. My son had gone home to be with the Lord. My daughter was in another state. And it's like, Cindi, you can do your dream now. And my home was paid for. So I knew if I rented out my home, that would be my income. I wouldn't have to go knocking door to door. I'm a missionary. Can you give me money?
Right.
And so I was running a preschool in my home at the time. And one of the preschool girls' mom said, stop teaching my little girl about God because the Bible is a fairy tale. And at that point, after she left, I Googled Bible proofs, and I started doing all kinds of archaeological research and just researching, how do we know the Bible is not a fairy tale? And I found Kent Hovind. And that
was in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, had you gotten into the young eartherism at all, or the creation science? Were you already into that before then? Okay.
Yes. In 1987, I had gone to a week-long Institute for Creation Research in San Diego, back when Henry Morris was still in San Diego and still living.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw Ken Ham was still with ICR at that time, Dwayne Gish, Steve Austin.
Dwayne Gish himself, wow.
Yeah, I have
the
cassette recording the whole thing.
He likes getting on ponies and galloping. It's fantastic.
The original
the Gish
Gallop.
And I went to the Grand Canyon with them, and I went to Mount St. Helens with them. And so I had that in my heart. That actually really helped me to reconcile what I had learned in college about evolution with the Bible. And so when I heard Kent Hovind presenting it in a less boring way, I started listening to it addictively. And my roommate said, "Are you listening to that dinosaur guy again?" And I don't understand why I'm like addicted to this guy. And then my mom got sick, and I had to go care for her near Alabama, because I was like, how do you get from California to Alabama when you have a preschool you have to run? But my mom got sick, and I had to go take care of her. And so I ended up visiting. And Dinosaur Adventureland was good in the beginning, but so was Jamestown.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know that, but Jamestown started out as a place where they wanted to help people, and it turned sour. The documentary on Jim Jones and Jamestown brought that to light. So anyway, I fell in love with Dinosaur Adventureland, and
so that would be so you had to come to Alabama because your mother was sick.
Mm-hmm.
It just so happens, just thank you to the universe, that Dinosaur Adventureland and that kind of coincided. And so you were watching this.
It wasn't that close. She was Maryland, but still, I'm on the right side of the continent, And I said, I'm going to take a bus. Can you imagine taking a bus through Selma? I mean, it was scary, but I wanted to see it.
And so that would be, so you started watching the content. It was, I can understand just from an opposing view of Kent, we'll say, why it's fun sometimes to do Kent Hovind debates and stuff like that. And so I can understand why even the atheists sometimes like to some side of fiery. So how long was it, do you think, between watching content and then bus ride?
I only watched his seminar series. I just barely started watching his current stuff, and I never liked his debates.
I can understand. I can also understand.
I thought he was rude. I thought he was evasive. I would always bite my fingernails, and I did not like his debates. But when I took the bus, that was only like 3 weeks that I spent there, because I still had my preschool and I was going just to check it out. And then the substitute teacher for my preschool called me up and said, Cindi, you have to come home. And I'm like, oh. So I went home, prayed about it, called Kent several more times just to say, look, I'm going to sell everything. I'm going to rent out my house, and I will be homeless if you don't do what you said. You're sure now? If I do this and I drive there, you're going to put me up, right? And so I did that. And I remember experiencing the kind of abject terror that I had never experienced before when I was sleeping in my cabin. Something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. But I used to have flips in my stomach. Something was wrong, but I didn't know what. And there was so much beauty because there were so many people like myself that wanted to be missionaries, wanted to serve God. They
wanted to do good.
Do good. They were kind, they were loving. And like you were saying in our intro before you went live, that's what he hides behind. He uses us to make other people think that that's what he's like. But he's hiding behind us. He's not like that. He is not loving. But it took me 5 years to see the real Kent Hovind. So for the first couple of years, I thought this was a dream come true. I actually put up the geodesic dome greenhouse there to try and represent what the early planet used to be like, with some kind of a canopy. Kent says it's a crystalline canopy, which is ice. Other people say it's a vapor canopy. Other people say it's scientifically infeasible. But we know that there's fossil fuels on both poles. So we know it used to be tropical at the poles. And in fact, we know that it used to be tropical in the deserts, because that's where we get our oil. That's a fossil fuel. So there is evidence that the earth used to be lush and tropical and like paradise. And that was one of my favorite themes, because when you love creation and when this earth has burned you bad, it's like what you long for. It's like your comfort, thinking that someday I'm going to be back in paradise. It's like Hawaii, you know?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So how long? So actually, before we even continue, can you explain your first day at Dinosaur Adventureland? You had packed, you had been watching videos, so it must have been, I mean, I almost would like to go, I go back and forth whether I would like to even give him money to see it, but nonetheless, let's go back there for a second. What was your
It's
first
free.
day like there? Is it
You
free?
You don't
Oh,
have to
it goes on donations. Oh man, now you're tempting me even more. No.
That's why I thought he was a good guy. Who gives away stuff for free?
For free. It's what, and I will say I'm skipping in my own notes, but the funny thing is, in my view, I think it's a great sell on his part, because you could say, well, look, sure, it's just an adventure park, but really the primary thing is the Bible. Really, what we're really trying to do is spread the Lord Jesus. Yes, but in my view, it is the complete opposite. It is basically this theme park that he has been able to attach the Bible to on top of. And so he is able to use that veneer to then go, oh no, we're doing the Lord's work, and here's a shovel. Now maybe I am skipping.
No, ma'am, you have it exactly right. It took me a long time to realize that, because there's one thing to steal money from a stranger, but to steal money from a baby or a grandma, and that's essentially what you just described. It's a con game. And
from good people, lots and lots of good people.
Yeah, and I could get in trouble. I mean, he wants to sue me for slander, but slander is lies. And since this is the truth, yeah.
And
in fact, let me say something to that.
Oh no, absolutely.
You said, say the last sentence that you said again.
I'm trying to think. We were talking about how it's a con game, how it's kind of the veneer.
The veneer. So, and how he attached the Bible to it to attract gullible people. I don't know why Christians are so gullible. I guess because we're supposed to not look at the outward appearance. If somebody looks shady, we're not supposed to judge them. We're supposed to accept them. And anyway, the time when my husband turned on me, I want to tell you how he attached the Bible to that.
Okay.
So we had been talking a little bit pre-show about the drug bust. And I had come to my husband and said, Steve, his tech guy that he talks to every night on his live show, Kenny and Timmy had come to me and confessed that Steve had given them pot, and that when the drug test came up clean, that it was a lie. They came to me to confess, Cindy, we weren't clean. Steve told us to put the swab in our pocket so that the test would look clean.
Who is it? Were you?
Huh?
Were you drug testing? Were you drug testing people there, or was
Kent Hovind ordered a drug test to be administered by Steve, the one who gave him the drugs? Oh yeah. God. Okay. And
like making the head of the DEA agent a drug dealer.
Let's put the monkeys in charge of the bananas.
So Ken didn't want there to be a positive test. He wanted it to look like everything was good because Steve was running the test.
And when I asked him, I said, honey, at that point we were married, and I still called him honey. We were tight like this for a year. Anyway, for 3 years. Anyway, I said, honey, Steve is the one who's accused of bringing them to his house and giving them the drugs. He should be taking the test. And my husband says to me, no. And right then I went, oh. Okay, but so when Kenny and Timmy came and confessed to me, I, of course, went to my husband. And my husband, at first he believed me, and he said, yeah, I know Steve was covering for Kenny and Timmy. And I'm like, no, Steve's covering for his own butt. But anyway, Then my husband went to Steve. And after he'd been with Steve, he comes back and he says, Cindi, you're lying. Kenny and Timmy are lying. You have a personal vendetta against Steve. I'm like, what? He's my tenant. No, I don't think so. And so
why do you if I could just ask, why do you think it was Kent wanted so eager to take his side over yours, over his wife?
That went on and on for a year. At this point, at this point, I think there's a cover up. Either Steve has blackmail on Kent Hovind, or there's a money grab, or there is some kind of a sex scandal going on.
Something's not kosher.
Because it got worse and worse and worse. It
just doesn't seem right. You have your wife, and then after the incident when you had to evict Steve, and Steve was treating you horribly during that experience, and instead of calling Steve and telling him, hey, don't treat my wife like that, it doesn't have to be that way, he totally took Steve's side.
Yes. Gaslighting. It was intentional gaslighting. I look back now. But the thing about attaching the Bible to it, I want to go to that one. So I said to him, so I had been on campus for 3 years at that point, and everybody knew me. I was like the camp mom, and they knew I wasn't a liar. And I said, honey, nobody on campus would agree with you that I'm lying, first of all. And second of all, everybody on campus knows Steve is a liar and that Steve does drugs. He's been doing them for 3 years. Steve got there a little before me.
That's been well known for a while.
And so he says, okay, let's call a meeting. So he calls this meeting with all of the long timers. And there were 7 witnesses there. And they all said, we've known Cindi for a long time. She's not a liar. I don't think she's lying. Steve, on the other hand, lies all the time, and he's lying. And instead of my husband going, oh, I have 7 witnesses here. I guess I should vindicate my wife. Instead of doing that, he calls Ernie Land, who is the owner. Okay, Kent Hovind doesn't own anything because the feds would come take it. Ernie Land is his little altar.
It's in his name.
Yes.
Picky.
And so Ernie says on loudspeaker in front of all of the witnesses, Kent Hovind is Moses, and I am his mouthpiece, Aaron. I do his talking for him. And Cindi is Korah. I don't know if you know that Bible story, but Korah led a rebellion against Moses.
Not
and
the legends of
Korah
Korah.
opened up and swallowed them all down. And what Kenny and
you remember that one, Amy?
Weren't we actually just talking about Korah?
We did that a few chapters ago,
Yeah, we're in Numbers right now. We actually do a Bible study on this channel.
Oh my gosh, I should have listened. I'm sorry I didn't.
Oh no. Well, like I said, Cindi, we cannot thank you enough for even being here. I have a lot of questions. I think both James and I about the situation in Kent Hovind itself, but I want to go back just 1 second because I think a lot of you were just bringing up things like Jonestown and a lot of other, I think a lot of bad situations. There's no way that there had to have been something that I guess draws in. And so I think Dinosaur Adventureland, even though it may be we're using that as a trap to draw people. I was looking just when I was doing research, you go on Google and it says, how easy is it to volunteer? And it's like, it's fantastic. Just come here and we'll get you started right away. And so it has this very almost like a day camp kind of vibe that they're trying to push out. Clearly, that is not the reality So what, you were very excited. I know the exact feeling of wanting to take a road trip and getting there and finally making it. What was your first day like actually at Dinosaur Adventureland?
Well, I was a city girl from California, and this is 120 acres with lakes and sand dunes and forests. And I remember going out into one of the fields and just, there were like 16 different kinds of butterflies when I just was sitting there and looking out over a lake and the stars at night. I mean, it was amazing.
It was very pretty.
And
Sounds
then
like it's beautiful.
it's very beautiful, and you eat.
Very different.
Yeah, very different. And I was still kind of in mourning over my son. He had died in 12. And so I really thrived on the fellowship. So what you do when you go to volunteer, you trade essentially about a 40-hour work week for room and board. And so all day long you are working side by side with friends. It's awesome, you know? And you've got tractors you can use, and I would turn a gravel pit into an orchard, and I was trying to make it look like paradise, so I would use the auger. Me and Kenny would drive the tractor and make a bunch of auger holes and plant trees and get rabbit manure, and we bought rabbits for manure, and it was cool. And then we eat together. Okay, breakfast before we start work, we're all together. Lunch, we're all together. Dinner, we're all together. And then you go to Bible study and you're
Very
all together
communal.
again. So part of it.
And I honestly, what you just said there, I think that is one of the strongest draws of religion in general. I think is that community aspect. I think we are very social creatures. You want to be warm, you want to be fed, but if it's just by yourself, you're looking at just a lot of white snow. You want to actually talk about things together and have a good time. I think it's much easier to build a house together than by yourself, right? And so completely understand. And so I once again, I can definitely see coming from that. I want to go visit, seeing as kind of a suburban Philly kind of girl myself. I would like to go visit more of the South. But now I want to. So what was your first? I'm trying to think how far go down the line. How about this? Before we take that turn, actually, I want to ask, how did you start getting really involved? Is there like a hierarchy? Is there do you just volunteer and say, well, look, my expertise is in this? Because I was looking at some of your videos. We are actually going to give a shout out for whatever Cindi wants to give to her media at the end, because we want to get her more subscribers. But it looks like I guess you like to teach. And so was that kind of just a natural transition to you came here to why not start giving examples? It looked like you were showing off the displays. You were actually running a lot of what was going on. How did that come about?
That was so cool, Amy. So the reason that I volunteered in the first place, I mean, I actually looked into going to Africa or Haiti or China, and I chose this place instead because I knew I needed my garden. That was my therapy. And so I started as a landscaper, but then I learned how things worked. And, not everybody has a monthly income like I was able to get from my home. And so a lot of people come and go. They stay for a very short time. And so just over time, I became an oldie, you know, I'd been there a long time. I knew how things worked. And then my mom got sick again, or let's see, how did this work? No. Yes. Long story short, at one point I told Kent Hovind, I don't want to do landscaping anymore. I believe that I have a teacher's brain. I have a science major, and I think I should stop working with dirt. I need to be social and try and evangelize, use the gift that God gave me. And so I started working on the science center. And I know Dapper Dino, Timothy, he corrected me on some things that are in the science center. Like a Jackson's chameleon can't grow into a triceratops.
That's one of Kent's sillier arguments.
What?
Yeah.
Both Paul
That's one of
and
Kent's
Dapper
sillier.
Dino. We're sending hearts out too.
But you know what? When you're in a greenhouse environment, like we were talking about earlier, things do grow bigger, better, stronger, faster. So, you know, it's not. But anyway, I did.
But there are limits to that, as Kent would say. There are limits to how much things can evolve. Yeah.
Yes. But can I say something?
Micro, not macro.
Yes. And like genetically, and somebody else was pointing that out about age, that age, oh yeah, they were criticizing his thing about x-rays making you age. But and the critic was saying that age isn't determined by x-rays from the sun. Age is determined by your genes. So that's going to be true too. But nonetheless, when Dapper Dino showed a picture of a Jackson's chameleon next to a triceratops, and he was pointing out all the differences. Okay, first of all, and this, I actually asked Kent about this when I was working on that display. I said, a chameleon can grasp. A triceratops has a flat foot. So, different species. And so, anyway, Dapper was pointing out all the differences that mean that they couldn't be the same species. But as I was thinking about this, wouldn't it be fair to do the same thing with Pakicetus and a whale? If you say that a whale evolved from a Pakicetus or whatever, I don't know the name, you could put them side by side, just like he did with the Triceratops and the Jackson's chameleon, and you could point out they couldn't grow into one another. They're a different species. So I kind of wanted to go, booyah, Timothy. But anyway.
Well, and that is speaking about corrections of Kent. And we'll say his less than open-mindedness to that idea. So you have, at this point, you are not only just a volunteer, you're helping run the place. When did you start? What was the first inkling? Because I know you said you felt something on your gut the first night, even though it was beautiful and it was amazing. When was something kind of more concrete? When you're like, you know, that's not exactly, I don't know if the word is biblical, but let's just say, I guess the word I was using before is not kosher. Something was going on.
Yes. And it actually wasn't my first night when I think I was wrong about that. I remember I was in my cabin and I had already built my cabin at that time. So it was a few months in. But, you know, there's something wrong with everybody. And so the real question is, when do you notice that what's wrong is crossing a line to where this is not something where you're supposed to just turn the other way? Because, like, for example, at one point I told him I'm not going to go to the morning meetings anymore because it was too painful to watch how he was treating people. And why in the heck would I? So,
and if I could ask, actually, what do you mean by that? Was he wasn't a fun meeting kind of guy, I'm guessing?
he was demeaning. He didn't care. I would actually, and I have talked to some of the volunteers, and I think that some of the videos on my channel, the interviews that I did with other volunteers, they agreed with me on this, that he would intentionally ask you to do something that was demeaning or really too hard for you just to see if you would obey him.
He'd test people.
Yes.
See, like he's not shy.
And I'm like, sorry, what?
Well, Robot, just a little bit.
He's not shy about the idea that, oh, you come down, you stay for a day, the next day I'll put you to work. That
it's not the
he
next
really
day,
wants
honey.
people to be working.
It's the same day.
But
and that's funny that is the. Oh no, continue. Sorry.
I was just, you hear it from like people who have been on the compound before that, these people, some of them draw small salaries, some of them don't, but that they'll be working, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours, and they just sit down for a few minutes just after working for a while just to take a break. And Kent Hovind will come by and say, whoa, what are you doing? This is not a retirement home. What are you doing? Back to work. Like he's like very on top of you. Like, is there really that much work that needs to be done all the time? Or does he just like people scampering around, running around, doing his bidding?
The latter. I mean, there's always stuff to do, but he wants people doing the bidding. And what I started to say about Korra's rebellion, that's because I wasn't going to do his bidding. I wasn't going to say, okay, you're right, I'm lying. Okay, Steve's not lying. Kenny and Timmy are lying. And yes, I have a personal vendetta against Steve, and I was just making it up. I mean, he started saying, you're not being a submissive wife after that. And I'm like, a submissive wife? So you mean I have to say I'm lying in order to, but so when Ernie said that to me, and Kenny and Timmy said that they remembered, not only did they say that I was leading Korra's rebellion and that anybody who testified for me would be joining Korra's rebellion and asked to leave campus, and that I, as his wife, could be asked to leave campus just like anybody else. And at that point, that was 180 degrees from what I had experienced. My husband had been treating me like a queen prior to that time. And all of the sudden, now it was spiritually manipulative. It was 100% lying. And he's doing it with a smile on his face. And he says, now let's close the meeting in prayer. Okay, that's Ravi Zacharias. I don't know if you know that story, but anyway, I stood up, started crying at the top of my lungs, and ran from the table. I ran home in tears. And after that, Ernie started saying, I saw you showing up last night like a little 3-year-old child who's not getting her way. You're bipolar. You've got mental issues. You've got demonic issues. That went on for a year after that they were saying I'm bipolar, I'm demonic, I'm rebelling against my husband, I'm a bad Christian wife, leaving a bad example for everybody on campus. It was freaking horrific.
And it also sounds like once that you started to even have any hesitancy about some of his responses, it seems like now The other underlings are now given pressure because they have to either pick on you or else they're demonic, rebellious type of.
Honey,
healers.
everybody turned on me at that
not a
point.
doctor to be labeling people mentally.
And of course, if I'm gonna cry, if I'm gonna be betrayed, I'm gonna cry. That's not bipolar.
So that's called being a human. I don't know if they. It's something that once again is a response that I think anyone would do after being treated like crap by
by your husband,
someone that you love.
Yeah.
I thought I was living my dream. And like you said, everybody was made to choose at that point. And when you sell everything and this is now your home and you don't have another home to go to. So I lost a lot of my friends. They wouldn't talk to me anymore. And they were afraid of being seen with me because they'd get kicked off campus. That is on the spirit.
Is that primarily like the tool?
Yes.
Is that the tool that Kent primarily uses to keep people in control? Because a cult, there's got to be fear of the cult leader, and he's got to ensure loyalty. Is his threat that, well, you don't have any other place to go, so if I throw you out, you're not going to have anywhere else to go, so don't make things difficult for me.
Yeah, he doesn't have to remind them that they don't have any place else to go. He just makes them feel dispensable. He doesn't care about people. And he will tell you, if you don't like the way I run this ministry, go start your own. Go find somewhere else to live. He says that to people left and right. And some people that have given their all, like they've given thousands of dollars and they've volunteered for long periods of time. And he just throws them out. That I'm not the only one he threw out the window. And
no, we've seen there's other people have come forward that have been unceremoniously tossed from DAL. And one of the things you hear that comes up is, and maybe you can testify to this, is that I've heard lots of people say that everybody has a slightly different on-air persona, but they say Kent's is like, it's like when he's on camera, like as soon as that camera goes off, it's like a completely different person, like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing. Like when he's on camera, he's very nice and kind and sweet. And then as soon as that camera goes off, is it that fast?
I've heard two people say that they had witnessed him come into the room angry. And as soon as the camera goes on, it's smiling Kent. Now, I quit going to Bible study some months before I left because of the hypocrisy, because he would preach about being a good husband and then he would be a shitty one. And, or whatever else the man, there's a Bible verse about that. Do what they say, but do not do what they do. Kent Hovind's actions and his preaching are about as opposite as you could get. So anyway,
it doesn't seem exactly like he follows his own biblical morality.
No, ma'am. In fact, I believe it now that he doesn't believe that it's true, because if it were true, he'd be burning in hell.
It is funny you said that. I didn't know if I was going to ask that question. There's a piece of me. So Kent has been taught basically via debate and discussion about certain subjects in evolution, biology, cosmology, by the best people in the world. And there are certain times where I don't know, is the theology, is everything he presenting, that is 100% his actual views, or is there
a script?
I mean, it seems to me like he literally can't change it, because if he changes it, this is a business that is basically, it's
Oh
almost
my
printing
gosh.
money because it's tax-free. And so he can't change. This is his business model. So I guess.
And he doesn't want to ever admit being wrong.
On the head. I've heard several people say that he's on a script and that he's uncomfortable leaving his script.
I mean, if you've heard one of his debates, or you've heard them all, because it's literally verbatim, word for word, every single time.
I used to, he would do some of them at home with his phone. And many times I'd be like, give me the phone, because he would be on his script and I would be like tuning into where the person was coming from and wanting to address more directly what they were asking. And sometimes, I think only 2 times he let me interject, and not just debates, but he would have people calling him, asking him for personal advice. And
oh boy,
or like,
tax advice.
well, spiritual advice. And anyway, yeah, I remember many times wanting to grab the phone and give a better answer.
So I just going far that track, because it'll get us maybe to the present and then we can dip back and forth into it. But what was the actual straw that broke the camel's back? Or even, was there a specific thing where it's just, I can't put up with this anymore?
This is too much. Yeah.
I know exactly what it was. So that whole bipolar thing went on for a year. And now I realize that as a Christian pastor, he couldn't really kick his wife off campus. That would ruin his reputation. And
would look bad.
What he did was he turned the flame up on me.
He's got to make you leave him.
He's got to make me leave. And so he was being abusive. And he and Steve and Ernie, all 3 of them, are in on some kind of a cover-up. And I had to go because I wasn't going to shut up about it. And I'm not going to cover up for him. I'm not going to lie for him. I mean, when I say I wasn't going to shut up about it, I don't want it to seem like I was a nagging wife, because I really don't believe that I was. But I wasn't going to lie, and I wasn't going to have submission defined in his warped way. But so, I mean, they accused me of snooping in the office and took my key away. It was a hellish year after that.
This is your husband. Yes. This is the man that you live with and you go to bed with and wake up with, and you're snooping around the office. That must have been so hurtful. I can't even imagine that.
Very hurtful and shocking. I mean, and he would do the duplicity. Okay. So he would badmouth me in the morning meetings and then come home and, oh, honey, let me rub your back, and act sweetie. And so
playing both sides.
I was fooled. It took me a very long time. When I look back, I'm like, why the hell didn't I leave right then? But so there were 3 strikes. When I gave Steve a 30-day notice, I was having other people. I had another person that wanted to rent it when Steve left. And so I was doing a video chat showing him, here's the well house, here's the brand new roof, blah, blah, blah. And I knew Steve was hostile. And so I was not on the property. I was in the street. And Steve came out and thought that I was filming him. And I said, I'm I'm not filming you. I'm not harassing you. I'm doing a video chat with a prospective tenant. No, you're not. This is harassment. I'm going to sue you. You're a fucking bitch. Blah, blah, blah. And yeah. And so I turned the camera on him, and I guess I don't remember every detail, but he went in the house and he came back out like a minute later with his right hand in his right pocket. And I knew he had a gun. And I'm like, what the hell? I mean, I was raised near Oakland, California, which is probably like Philly, where you learn that there's danger all around you and you keep your head up and you don't act scared. And that's what my dad taught me. And so that's what I did. But anyway,
this is real life. He's basically making an overt threat that I have a gun. Don't piss me off because you know what could happen.
And if I could freeze frame for just a second, it just shows you the dichotomy, how much
there's a mafia behind this.
It never starts out where it was always just everything was terrible. Like you were saying, there was a community and there was this aspect of good people trying to do good things. And yet there is this leader at the center of it that is almost using other people's goodness so that he can make himself feel big.
So that he can hide a Christian money grab that's really a mafia con job. So everybody always wondered, why does Kent favor Steve? But it was a puzzlement. It wasn't a for sure thing. And it became a for sure thing. Kent has an inner circle that is evil. So anyway, I went home to my husband and I said, honey, I think Steve just pulled a gun on me. And he did nothing. Nothing. And he said, oh, I'll take care of it. And I'm like, but he never did. Okay, so that's strike one. The next day, Steve moves out and he steals all my appliances, rips the thermostat out of the wall, all the lights out of the wall, broke a window, and essentially
he's just damaging stuff just to make things harder for you, just to damage your property.
More difficult.
Because he was pissed off that I evicted him. But anyway, I went home again. I said, honey, Steve just trashed and stripped my house. Will you please come and see the damages? I don't want anything to do with your for-profit property rental. And I went, what? My for-profit property rental? You mean my income source so you don't have to support me? So that when you want to go to the lumber yard and get building materials for your dream, I give you my credit card? That for-profit property rental?
Of all the people, the gall on that. I would say gentleman, but I don't think he is one. So, but my lord.
Honey,
I mean, what is he supposed to say, that you should just supply Steve with free housing forever just because he's part of the ministry? And yeah.
But it just goes to show you how much respect he had for your aspect of this community.
And that's criminal behavior.
Well, that is, I mean, that is what the mob. I mean, you were using the analogy of the mob, but it's not even an analogy. It really, that is what the mob does.
That's right.
Yeah.
And see, I wasn't putting it all together at that time, but now I look back, and a week later, Kent came to the property for a different reason. One of the people that was helping me clean it up had been at Dinosaur Adventureland and had gotten kicked off and was owed one final paycheck. And so Kent came to give him the paycheck, but he wouldn't come in. He stayed in like the front entry. And the girl said to me, Cindi, did you notice that he sent Laszlo around the house to view the damages, but he stayed in the front entry? And if you listen to one of the audio recordings that Theo did of Ernie Land uses the word culpable deniability. That their lawyer.
That way you could say you didn't see it. Yeah.
Damn straight. And so I knew. And also I have another recording of Kent where he says, he's talking to Steve on the phone. And he says, so what are the damages? I mean, how Nick left it. So they had conspired that they were going to say that the damages Steve did to my house were left by Nick, who did construction work in the house a year earlier. I'm sorry, Nick didn't break a window. Nick didn't rip the thermostat out of the wall. Nick didn't do the damages. They were freaking conspiring. That was one of Kent's little turn the flame up on Cindi so we can get her the hell out of here. Okay, that was strike.
I mean, these people lie all the time. I mean,
yeah, that's right. So then the third day, okay, these 3 strikes that booted me out the door happened 3 days in a row. So the third, and this is a recording on my channel, okay? If you go to, you have to click on playlists. And in Cindi Lincoln YouTube playlist, you could click on Kent Hovind Exposed. And there's a 4-hour documentary that's called Thug Life. And I have a recording here of Kent Hovind calling all of his board members and calling Steve and talking about putting Steve on the board. Not only did he not defend me when Steve put a gun on me and trashed my house, but he promoted Steve to the board. That was strike 3. I said, Cindi, this is no misunderstanding. You are in enemy territory. This is not a marriage. Get the hell out of here. And that's when I realized that I was in danger. I was going to either get harmed or I was going to get so angry that I hit my husband and I was going to end up in jail. And that's when I finally left. And when he's talking to his board members about putting Steve on the board, he's laughing and saying, ha ha, won't that get Cindi excited?
And can I ask, when did you actually get out?
Steve vacated January 26th. And then I sent 2 people in there to get the place cleaned up and painted and repaired so that it would be livable for my mom and I. At that point, my mother was living at Dinosaur Adventure Land. And so I moved out around Valentine's Day, somewhere around Valentine's Day. They had gotten the place painted and clean enough. And then I brought my mother and her caregiver a little bit after that, because it wasn't quite finished, but it was good enough for me to get the heck out of there.
Yeah, I think.
And I think you made the right call.
I think that's a good call. And honestly, all 3 of those.
I could just imagine Kent standing around saying, "Hey, that accident Cindi had with the gun, accident." Yeah.
I have another recording of him where he's talking to Brady Byram about how they can screw me out of my 20-year contract. That's a whole nother thing. And he says to Brady, oh, well, she won't need it if she's dead. And I'm like,
holy moly
is right.
This would make
man of God.
Wrong God. yeah, this kind of behavior, everybody always says, well, everybody sins. No, this is not your normal everybody sins stuff. He doesn't have the Holy Spirit working in him. He doesn't have any fear of God whatsoever. He doesn't have any compassion on somebody that he's hurting. In fact, he enjoys hurting me. And in the
He
interview,
enjoys people suffering.
yeah. And I didn't, I guess I'm a little slow because I just don't realize those kind of people exist. It's so shocking, especially coming from a pastor that I loved. I loved his image. I I had wanted to be a
Yeah.
missionary for 30 years. I thought he was sold out for Christ, you know, and he was very kind and loving to me. I'd never had a man give me a back rub before, or, hold the door open for me, or take my hand as I got out of the van.
So at the very beginning, it sounds like he was very charming.
And he tried to keep the charm up. He's a double-faced
He's an
man.
I'll tell you, this is the one. I think this is almost going to become a backhanded compliment. But James and I, especially when we review some of his videos, we always say, Kent, just quit your job, become a comedian. I see he has that same kind of. He wants to get laughs. He builds jokes into his debates, into his lectures, or whatever you want to say. I have the same feeling sometimes when James and I are doing improv or something like that. I wish, yet it doesn't seem. So I could see both where he could try to be funny, try to be charming, and then once again, though, a lot of his stuff, it seems surprising from a pastor. I'm like, Kent, quit that day job, go into jokes if that's what you want to do. I feel like I had a point there, and then I just wanted to, like I said, it was going to become a backhanded compliment by the end.
So I could ask, so you were friends with Mary Toko, so after she left and he was asking her to come back, and there was kind of that few months in limbo, and how did Kent turn you from being Mary's friend to being Mrs. Hovind? How long did that take, and what exactly transpired?
Kent Hovind didn't try and get me. In fact, I wanted to say a couple things about Mary. It's interesting you brought that up, because Mary, if you read her statement, her public statement, why I left Kent Hovind, she says the same thing Amy was just saying. He's charming, he's witty,
yes,
he's funny. Anyway, when they were going back and forth after she had left, he would show me her texts and she would show me his texts. And I was trying to help him understand her and help her understand him and get them back together. And I just didn't have enough of the picture, because I ended up telling Mary, honey, I think this man is legit. I think you need to come home. And but nonetheless, I did leave when she left, because I felt that if she left because she was afraid that the IRS would come or the feds were going to come, and that her freedom was in jeopardy, and because he had lied to her on a couple of occasions. And when she told me about the lies, in my mind, there was enough doubt that I could give him the benefit of the doubt, whereas she had that gut feeling that no, he just lied to me. And at that time I was thinking, well, a little bit of fudging isn't so bad. I don't know why I had so much justification going on. They call it cognitive dissonance. Anyway,
no, I will say, because I don't want to, there really is a Jekyll and Hyde, and I don't want you to think that you know, a lot of those same qualities sometimes are what is the rope in, because they then say, you know, oh, but baby, it doesn't matter that I give you the black eye. I love you. And it's that kind of, that's how you get there. And it never happens overnight, but I am completely sympathetic
there is the
to those type of situations.
And you're in love with the good one. And so the bad one, you have to blank out, especially when this is my third marriage and I did not want another divorce. I'm like, I have to make this work. Anyway, so because of the whole scare with the IRS and the feds and everything, and I had left and I was working nearby and staying in a pastor's home. And, but I came back for the grand opening because Freddie and Manon were pregnant and I wanted to keep that fellowship, my friends. And I felt like the Lord was telling me that I was supposed to help Manon have her baby. Okay. And I don't know if that was the Lord or not, but, and so, Freddie told me, Cindi, the IRS did come. The feds did come, and it was no big deal. And nobody's going to go to jail and blah, blah, blah. And so I came back and Mary didn't. And she had basically bought a home in another state. And I knew she was not coming back. And then, but still, you know, Kent was just too much of a controversial figure. I had never even considered him. But one day, I remember he was getting into the car to go preach in New York, and he was wearing his black suit, and he looked real handsome. And I started crying because he was leaving. He was going to New York to preach. And I went, why are you crying? Oh my gosh, you're in love with this man. And basically, as soon as he found out, he wanted to get married right away. And I didn't. That was my first act of submission, to not argue and say, well, no, we need to wait 6 months, you know, and date or whatever. And so.
How long did you guys wait?
We didn't.
It was
as soon as he found out that I changed my mind and that I would date him. I mean, he had told me, I remember we were sitting at the kitchen counter and he was doing something that now I recognize, you guys call it crocodile tears. He was saying something, I just don't think I can ever do enough for the Lord. I imagine I'm going to be at the judgment seat and God's going to say, I gave you this much, but you only did this much. And I'm just like,
yeah.
I remember I had my hand on his hand and I said, honey, all of us need the cross. None of us are going to go to God and say, I've done enough. I'm good enough. I get to come in because of my own merit. But now I realize he was probably manipulating me. I don't know. But
He was gaslighting you.
What you wanted to hear. And
yeah,
so that may have been why he was saying it.
To get I don't know. He had a way of sucking me in and bonding me to him. And I remember, let's see, where was I going with that? Oh, yeah. So he told me that he was going to date a bunch of women until he found a new wife. And I said, I don't think you should date a bunch of women. I think you should, the Bible says you're supposed to remain single or seek to be reconciled to your wife. And he said, I'm not going to remain single. I'm going to date and I'm going to go get another wife. And I remember he was dating this girl that lived in another state. She'd never been to Dinosaur Adventure Land. And I just knew that no matter what a great girl she was, I was his perfect mate because I lived there. I had his heart for the science, for the ministry, for the people, for caring for the guests and the volunteers. And so I said, because originally when he was saying that he was going to date, he said, I could take you on a date. And I said, no, I'm not interested. And then when I told him that I had changed my mind, he went, wait, what? You changed your mind? You'll go on a date with me? How about Saturday? And so I think we were married within a month because I felt like, well, I've known him for 2 years. I've lived here for 2 years. So, but I didn't. He's just too good of a Jekyll.
Yeah. I can, like I said, it almost, those type of people, the other thing, just to go a little bit forward, a trait of a narcissist, and I learned this while looking at some of there are specific creationist channels that if they have a specific charismatic leader and they get attacked, a lot of times what they will do is they will try to attack the other person's character publicly. Like what it can't be just enough that it's not just that they're a liar and you can't just say that to the person by yourself. It's that in a group you got to be like, Sarah's a liar, and you all, when you talk with her and stuff, you're supporting a liar. And it's almost like they attack the other or try and get the other people to put pressure on you so that you can come back into the flock submitting back to him. Does that even make sense?
Flying monkeys. Yeah. And in fact, that was a part of the cloaking. He wouldn't be the one to attack me. And that was why it was so confusing up until the end. I mean, the 3 strikes, he was attacking me, but he would have Steve attack me. He would have Ernie attack me. He would have Brady Byram attack me. And badmouth me at the morning meetings to everybody on campus. Yeah. And it's interesting, he teaches about the different ad hominem attacks. He teaches about the different debate things and that show that the person is losing because they're not talking science, they're talking ad hominem. But he does every single damn one of them.
Yes, he does.
He strawmans all the time with me. And I used to tell him, in fact, I have recordings of us fighting where I said, that's a straw man. Or with red herring.
Oh, he must not have liked that one bit, you telling him when he's strawmanning.
Well, and the other thing, if you listen to Theo's channel, Theo does a channel called Lies of the Devil, and he had Steve's job before Steve had it. His name is Theo. And he saw the same stuff and he says Kent Hovind is a liar of the devil. And he's got a whole, 60 videos exposing Kent Hovind. But one of them talks about...
Sounds like a good channel.
Yeah.
No, it is a good channel.
One of them talks about Joe and that she knew from very early in her marriage that the man that she loved wasn't the man that she married. The Jekyll and Hyde thing.
Unfortunately. I actually, another point, I think you brought this up. I forget if the guy's name was Jeff or you were talking about jabs. Like even when he'll compliment, but it's almost like it's an insult, compliment, insult. Or a compliment, insult, compliment. Yes. It's almost like even when he tries to put someone up, it's very hard because that would be minimizing himself, where he kind of wants to maximize, if that even makes sense. But going back to, I guess, the ad hominems that he does inside and outside of debates.
It does appear that if someone else is successful, he's threatened by that, and he has to minimize that person. I think that was another part of why he turned on me, because I was doing, the people, what I was going to say is I was doing a really good job in the Science Center. And I know that you guys might not agree with that because of the science differences, but the people that would come and take the tour, they all would go to Kent and say, wow, your wife's doing a great job. And I think, and also on campus, when people had problems, they wouldn't go to Kent because they knew he wouldn't listen. They would go to me because they knew that I would listen and that I would do something about it and get the problem solved. And I think Kent was threatened by that as well. He just
yeah,
be the brightest light in the room.
it's the focus has to be on him,
And that is a narcissistic trait, like you're saying.
Absolutely. Do you think a lot of it probably has to do with Kent? It seems like he holds a lot of misogynistic views, and he holds women in very low regard, and I think that's universal. And I know that the Christian doctrine that the wife should be submissive, but submissive, not necessarily silent, not necessarily absolutely subservient. There's a difference in that.
That is a really good point. I'm so glad you brought that out. Misogyny means that you hate women. And he would say, I love women. Ha ha ha. Yeah. But
yeah. For more than just their genitalia.
Right. He has been hateful, very hateful. And other people have noticed that he treats women badly. And he does have a twisted view of submission. For example, I actually do believe that it's okay to submit to your husband, but there is a difference between a slave or a dog. Okay? When your dog is just a dog, he's supposed to obey you because, if he, whatever. But wives are not dogs, and wives are not slaves. And in fact, I believe you could make a case scripturally that the Lord gave women a brain that is supposed to counterbalance the weaknesses of a man just as much as the Lord gave men to counterbalance the weaknesses of a woman.
I think that's what a partner you're supposed to do. You kind of counterbalance each other that way, especially if your partner misses something, you're able to be there to be like, no, honey, you missed that, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're there to be a partnership. That's why it's called that.
Yeah. A helpmate. And in fact, my pastor in California, he would say things like, well, I'm not very good at that. So if you want to talk about that, you go talk to my wife. He respected her as a partner and knew that she had strengths and he wasn't threatened by her strengths. He knew that as a human, we all have weaknesses and strengths. And if you know your weaknesses, it's a strength to delegate them to somebody else. And if your husband is telling you to lie and calling that submission, that's not submission. That's
just admit that, come out and say that you lied, you made it all up. Humiliate yourself when it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Just pulling other people into you doing something terrible.
He wanted me to cover for Steve and cover. They were I remember going to him. Okay, shortly after that situation where I ran away crying, within a few days of that, Steve decided that he wanted to buy my rental property instead of renting it. Only he didn't want to get a bank loan. He basically just wanted to rent it. And then at the end of 10 years, I kissed my property goodbye. And I'm like,
rent to own.
First of all, Steve, I just watched you fraud a drug test. And I watched you lie to my husband and myself.
As Jesus would do.
I'm not, as Jesus would do. And then turn around and say, oh, but I am a Christian. And Ken always says, Steve loves the Lord. He's loyal to the ministry. If I could throw up. Anyway, so I said, Steve, I'm
loyal to him.
I can't, on him. I can't, I won't be your banker. You're not a good risk. Oh my gosh, you would have thought I just killed the fatted cow. So now he writes me this nasty letter. He says I'm a Jezebel. I slept with the guy that I dated before Kent, that I just hated him because when I hit on him, he said no. I'm like, oh,
oh boy.
All kinds of other crap. And so,
wow, he really did. It's like, just like in the show, he really did take it personally, and now he's taking it out on you.
Yeah. And, maybe I shouldn't have said, I'm an honest person. I didn't want to make up a story and say, I'm sorry, I can't sell the house because of some lie. I wanted to tell him the truth and give him an opportunity to recognize there's consequences to lying and whatever. So anyway, whatever, it might have been a mistake that I was that honest with him, but he hated my guts after that. And so I come to my husband.
Even at that point, I will say, if you had let it go then, it then would have just been a collection. Because then it would have been, well, you let it go this time, I let it go this time. You were holding your moral standards. You're like, no, I mean, you just broke something that you're the guy that's supposed to be making sure that everyone's not doing it, and you are selling it. So
yes, giving it. Well, so
this is not a good financial decision. I mean, why?
Right.
It's not nothing personal, but you're not obligated to do this financial arrangement with him.
Right. I actually had a realtor say that renting to own is a really bad idea, and that he makes a practice of never doing it. But the point was, he's calling me a Jezebel and insulting me and accusing me of sleeping with my boyfriend, and that anyway. So I bring the letter. I bring the letter to Kent, and I said, honey, look what Steve wrote to me. He's calling me a Jezebel. That's like the evilest woman in the Bible. And my husband gives it back to me as though nothing's wrong.
Oh, okay. We'll start calling you Jezebel.
Jezzy for short.
That's Amy's middle name.
You're going to allow him to call me a Jezebel? It's the same thing as like the 3 strikes, right? Only it's a year earlier, and he's not going to defend me. I forget.
Yeah, that was like a premonition, a warning sign of danger to come.
And it's also just telling that he is going, you had sex with your boyfriend in the time. It's like that. Yes, that is because at the time he was my boyfriend. Did you not hear? Now it'd be one thing if you're cheating. Oh, you didn't. Oh, well, okay. Well,
I had the conversation with Kent before.
Well, that's even worse. So he's just lying on top of that.
He's lying. How the hell would he know anyway?
Yeah.
Was he sitting there spying on you in the bedroom?
And my husband believed him. He actually called my boyfriend to ask. And I'm like,
I remember that Theo said that became an issue too, with them accusing Theo and his wife of
yes,
and having relations before they were officially married, and it seems very I don't know.
It took me a long time to figure this out, but you know what? So Kent does have a copy of their marriage certificate, and it is dated after their time at Dinosaur Adventureland. However,
Sorry.
they had a common law marriage just like Kent and I did, which I didn't know until more recently. So Kent was lying. Kent knew full well that they were married just as much as he and I were married. If you get married by a preacher, then it's not a state licensed marriage, but you're still married under God. And so Kent was intentionally lying. That's what he does. It's called discrediting a witness, because Theo was telling the truth about him. And so Kent had to make up lies about him so people wouldn't listen to him, which is what he did to me and anybody else who tells the truth.
Can I ask? We used the C word, I think, pre-show, and I wanted to ask what your views of the word cult, what it means, and why you think, because I think James and I would agree with you, and we could even expand maybe, but what exactly does the word cult mean, and why do you think that it would apply to someone like Kent and that?
I used to defend Kent on that all the time because, number one, there's no lock on the gate. You can leave anytime you want. Number two, none of us worship him. However,
much to his chagrin,
I didn't realize how much that alarmed him.
Yeah.
That's correct. And that's probably why all of us who got kicked off because we didn't. And we were under the impression that he was approachable. You know, like if you do something wrong, you say, oh, gee, you're right. Let me make that right. Oh, no. Not if you're a malignant narcissist. But anyway, the story I told about Moses and Korah, did I tell that when we were already live?
Yes, you mentioned that. You did mention that. That he compared himself to Moses and Ernie, or was Aaron?
Aaron's his mouthpiece.
Aaron Ra, as we call him during our Bible study.
That's right.
Well, that's cult-like to say that. And at the time, I don't know why this didn't. I mean, I remember being shocked. I remember saying that's screwed up, but it didn't cross the line into get the heck out of here yet. And I don't know why. Now looking back, that's a common spiritual abuse tactic. And in fact, I just talked to somebody else who had been told he had criticized Kent Hovind. This is a Christian, had criticized Kent Hovind to another Christian. And the Christian's response was, don't speak evil of the Lord's anointed. I'm sorry, there is no human that is elevated to that position. And God did not mean for any of us to be unaccountable.
Sounds like they're making another
Nobody's perfect.
Messiah once you're starting to use language like that.
Well,
Yes.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I have heard that. I've never heard Kent say it, but I've heard other people say that he really does believe he is one of the witnesses in the book of Revelation. Do you know if that's something he actually believes, or that he's open to the idea?
I have not heard that, but I have definitely heard him say 1,000,000 times, God called me to run this ministry. I'm the leader of this ministry. And basically it's a Pentecostal it's a Pentecostal idea to think the Lord speaks to me. I mean, I've had somebody come up to me and say, the Lord told me you're going to be my wife. This was in the 80s. And I'm just like, well, the Lord just told me to run as fast as I can.
Told me to get
That's the appropriate answer.
But and Ernie apparently is Pentecostal because he thinks that Kent is God's anointed and that he's like Moses. And if you cross Moses, it's the same as crossing God. But I don't believe that Kent Hovind has the same authority that Moses did. Moses talked to God. Kent Hovind, I'm sorry, I think it's pizza and peanut butter. I don't think it's God.
We're hoping Kent Hovind talks to 4 cell walls, but that's a different story.
He talks to SpongeBob a lot.
It's the SpongeBob. That's right.
That's his intellectual nemesis.
I remember.
Oh no, continue.
When I first came back after I had left for a while, and I saw that there was a SpongeBob in the YouTube room, I went, "What is that doing here?" And I actually took it and I hit it.
With the hammer?
I didn't know about the hammer. But anyway, now I realize why SpongeBob is there. It's not because he advocates the show.
Oh no.
It's because he thinks, oh, just imagine. He's making fun of evolutionists who just imagine that we evolved from slimy algae.
Oh, I would love to take Kent on that point. You know, that would be a dream come true.
You could do, just imagine you're Moses and God speaks
Yeah.
to you.
Well, I
the
told
whole world is at your command.
I told James, if I ever do debate Kent Hovind, it will 100% be in a Hawaiian t-shirt. So
I had this beautiful Hawaiian shirt that I just loved, and I feel like burning it now. It's like ruined.
I can understand. Just make sure you have a glass of water right next to you to put it out. You'll be okay.
I used to bring him his waters every night. Then I'd put electrolyte in there for his leg cramps.
Ooh, see, I do the same thing. I drink a lot of electrolytes. For all those Idiocracy fans out there, it's what plants crave.
Brondo. It's got electrolytes.
Right. I'm trying to think, probably just a few more minutes. I've actually been having a lot of fun. We could even
this has been good.
do this again.
Thank you.
Where would you like to be heading into the future? What is the message you want to be getting out there? Because I feel like you have an important story to tell. And so,
yeah.
What is it that you really just want people to know about either the situation, about who he is, about what your feelings are about all this?
Yes. There's something I didn't tell you that happened with Steve. When he got arrested, he confessed to stealing tens of thousands of dollars of donor funds. And that black Jeep that Kent's trying to sell right now, he bought with embezzled money. And Ernie Land owns everything. Creation Science Evangelism, Creation Science Evangelism Incorporated, Creation Science Evangelism Ministries, Creation Science Evangelism Ministries, Inc. They have all those organizations. What do you think for?
To keep them from the IRS.
Yeah. And so when you make your check payable to CSE, that doesn't specify any of them, does it? It can go in any account they want it to go to. And don't give your money. I'm sorry.
Oof.
I'm sorry. I do
Don't buy his DVDs. Don't buy them.
Well, you know what? If you like the message, the DVDs are, it's free on YouTube. Buy the DVDs and give them to your friends if you want to, but don't send a blank check for building Dinosaur Adventureland because people are getting hurt. People are getting hurt. I'm not the only one who got hurt. So that's my second message is don't sell everything and go there and expect Kent Hovind will appreciate all that you've given for him. No, he will take what he can from you and then spit you out. I do believe that the Lord did create the world and that if he's powerful enough to raise Jesus from the dead, he's powerful enough to preserve his word. And I do believe that God did create the universe and that we didn't come from slimy algae, but find somebody else to preach that message, to listen to. Kent is not representing Jesus in a way that I think he's dragging Jesus's name through the mud in his preaching as well as in his behavior. He's got some things right, but he's got fundamentally a lot of things wrong.
Cindi, thank you so very much.
Absolutely.
I think James and myself couldn't appreciate this more. We couldn't support your message. I think I can say for both of us, we are glad that you just made it out of there with your mind and your body intact.
Barely.
Barely.
Barely. Narcissistic abuse is very, very, very painful. It's very, very painful. And if it wasn't for all the YouTube channels out there on narcissistic abuse, Dr. Romani and Dr. Carter, I mean, I used to go to bed at night listening to that stuff just to get truth, to get rid of all the lies that were in there. It's very, so, you know, I would like
it's emotional,
yes,
verbal, physical abuse that you endured. And I imagine it's been about a year, and financial. Yeah, you were taken financially abused. It's been about a year since you've been out of it. I
left around Valentine's Day of this year, so less than a year. And I do have, well, never mind. I'm not going to say it.
That's okay. I'll take it in a...
She does have a YouTube channel.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Thank you so very much. In fact, I think James and myself are just going to be doing our outros and stuff on the after show and stuff, where we will join everyone when this premiere goes live. Instead, we are going to bring Cindi up along with her channel at the bottom. Once again, Cindi, thank you so very much. We are going to be putting this. We want to get her up and get all the subscribers she can. What can people find at your channel?
Well, Kent Hovind Exposed is how I started the channel, and you do have to click on playlists to find that. I also have some of my own Bible studies and some of my own science rebuttals. And I have some domestic abuse. Like when I went to counseling, they gave me some booklets, and I was just reading those with my comments just to try and help other women. Especially, my counselor told me when I said, it's just so hard to believe because he's a pastor. He said, Cindi, you would not believe how common it is in the church. He said it's very, very common in the church. So I know there's other women out there, and I would like to be able to help them a little bit. And also another message that I did a book reading on is, if God is good, then why is there so much evil and suffering? That's another message of my heart. I just listened to my own video today on that one. Mm-hmm. Gives the story about my son in that one too.
Wow.
Well, thank you so very much, Cindi. Once again, I can't.
Thank you guys for giving me a voice.
Can't thank you enough. It's been so good. Absolutely. And if you ever want to come back, if there's ever anything else you want to say, or if you want to come back to give us an update on how things are going with you, we'd love to have you back.
Yeah.
Maybe we can throw a few jabs at some of your science videos. Maybe get a little spicy, but not too spicy. We're not here to beat you up to run you through the ringers.
I really wish I could be full-time doing the science research to be more in the ring with you guys on that. I really, I mean, some of this stuff takes research. You don't want to just shoot off the hip. But right now, I'm still spending quite a lot of time in preparing for court battles, and I have 3 going right now.
Well, we wish you luck, and hopefully soon Kent will be looking at 4 walls very close by to him.
That's right. We prefer him as his original name, which is KH74320. Okay.
When Aaron Ra started calling him by his inmate ID number.
Aaron's the one who did that. Yeah, I remember that.
And
then he called him Cunt Koresh.
The 3rd case isn't a criminal case. It's just trying to get my money back. But
yeah, and that is, I think you did mention that. That is one of the things. I didn't know how much, but he is a prolific con artist. I think that is that much we have discovered.
Liar, misogynist, manipulator.
Yes. It's not like he wears a Rolex watch in the typical sense that we think of somebody who wants money.
Sure.
And he doesn't have a mansion, but he wants money to build his Dinosaur Adventureland. And so
to glorify himself.
Yes. And even if it's to glorify God, which is what he would say.
That's what he would say.
I think, James, you are right. But regardless of the reason, you don't pilfer it, you don't steal it, you don't manipulate it out of well-meaning Christians and then chew them up and spit them out.
No,
and unfortunately, that's what he does. So
I
he
think
is
they're
a
a good,
grubber.
well-meaning. Even though we come from the skeptic, the non-believer, whatever community, we have a lot of theists that come on this channel that are fantastic individuals, human beings that spend every day, I think, trying to just do better. And so, if anything, we just want to filter the people that are using religion to peddle their ego or whatever it is that they are trying to achieve, because we want people, whatever country you are, to believe what you want to believe and to go and live your best life. I think that's what we all want. And so we're just trying to go with the chaff from the wheat. I think that is all, because there's a lot of bullshitters out there.
You know what? And they're driving people away from the faith, from the church too.
And you've gone on a couple atheists, have you gotten any flack from fellow Christians because you've reached out to the atheist community?
James, you have no idea. I have lost friends over that.
Really?
Because you've gone on Atheist Junior, Dapper Dino, and our show, and you're not coming on here and selling out Christianity or saying you're not repudiating Christianity. You're just talking about somebody who is using Christianity in a predatory way.
Yeah. I've gotten yelled at, chewed out, insulted. And AJ points out, I didn't go to AJ. AJ came to me. I didn't even know who AJ was. And
we love AJ on this channel, by the way.
We do love Atheist Junior.
Sending hearts out to Atheist Junior.
He was very sweet to me. And
he's a great guy.
The Christians were not. The Christians were all, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get kicked off campus. I don't want to say anything bad about Kent Hovind because I'm not really sure if what you're saying is true or not. And Dapper Dino, Timothy, he said, the fact that you're not getting support from the church is a real big blot on the church. And then Matt Powell coming out and saying, oh, Cindy, you said the Lord's name in vain and God's not going to hold you guilty. And you went on an atheist channel and they are putting a gun up the cross of our Lord Jesus Christ. And you're just
He's being a little dramatic with that. Okay, Matt, calm down. Time to take your lithium. Yeah. Time to take your lithium, Matt. You see the picture Atheist Jr. had of Matt Powell like dressed like a baby, and Kent's like giving him a rattle or a pacifier.
Oh, no. I saw the one where they're both dressed in girls' blue dresses and holding hands.
Oh my!
I haven't seen the baby.
I like that picture.
Kent Hovind's got baby Matt Powell in there. He's like feeding him a bottle or putting a pacifier in his mouth.
Matt Powell is someone else. We need to do videos on him. My lordy, of all the,
he's out there.
I don't know who their tech crew is that they decide. I don't know why Kent chose Matt of all people, but
probably somebody who strokes Kent's ego, somebody who strokes his ego, looks up to him, reveres him as a mentor.
He was raised on Kent Hovind videos, and he loves Kent Hovind. And I tried to tell him about what was going on. He said, I don't have time to talk about this with you. I don't have time to read all this material you're sending me. And then it's like, well, gee, but you had time to listen to 600 recordings that Kent gave you?
Yeah, priorities might be a little...
I think the time when...
He had at least 4 of us call him and try and warn him about not moving to Dinosaur Adventureland. And he did it anyway. And I think he, like you said, he wants Kent's fame, and Kent wants him to take over when he gets old and gray, because he's a little clone, really.
Yeah.
I used to think that he would hopefully replace Steve and save the ministry from Steve. But now I know Kent is in cahoots with Steve, and Steve is not the whole problem.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it almost like he had his blessing. The moment that someone destroys your house or your property, and the husband says, you know, that sounds more like a you problem, you have to ask yourself, you know, who was really pulling the strings? And yes, a little bit of a mafia boss.
I call Steve Guido. Because he just, yeah, boss. What do you want, boss?
Do what you want.
Whatever you want, boss.
And they are yes men. I imagine he's surrounded by yes men, because if you have anyone who says no, then you got nowhere to sleep that night. You're out.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Amy, you don't have pictures of Kent wearing women's underwear, so maybe if you had those, you would. He would.
Yeah, I would have something to look forward to on my weekend.
Whoa.
But okay, you know what? I'm gonna go round before we give it back to you, Cindy, one more time. James, did you want to say anything? And then I think we're gonna head out. But it's been fun.
No, I just want to. It's been a good discussion. Yeah, thanks so much for coming on and giving us a little insight into what's been going on in your world. And if you, there's anything else you want to say to the channel, if someone asked you one reason, like what is the main thing that makes you a Christian, what would you say? What would your answer be? The main thing.
Because I really do believe that Christ or Jesus was God Almighty, the creator of the universe, come to earth. I do believe that.
And then my last question, and I know we've been saying, I think that's my second, third, but you want people to, or someone comes across Kent Hovind for the first time, what would you tell them?
Run!
All right. I think couldn't have had a better answer than that.
No,
on that.
No doubt in that one.
Ooh, as clear cut as we could get. I want to thank my co-host. No, not at all.
Thanks, Amy.
James W., along with our special guest host, Cindi Lincoln. And I hope you all had a fun time on this episode of Skeptic and Ranting interview with Cindi Lincoln, where tonight we talked with Cindi about her experiences being married to Kent Hovind, helping run Dinosaur Adventure Land. You got to have an adventure. And how she found her way out. Like I said, I want to thank my co-host, James W., along with our special guest host,
always,
Cindi Lincoln, along with the people in chat, our awesome mods who make this stream so great, and lovely viewers like you who make this channel even possible. Mwah. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to like, follow, or subscribe. Then hit that bell icon so you can get access to join our live streams. And after the show, we will be heading after the Skeptic and Ranting Discord server, the link of which is in the description below. So come join us for more fun. Oh, if Gizmo's there, I'm there. Or hey, leave a comment once the video's done. Lastly, if you'd like to help us make even more content, we offer some perks for our supporters by checking out our Patreon at patreon.com/Amy Newman. Some unholy perks. I am Amy Newman, and we will see you all on the next Skeptic Ball Z. Good night, everyone.
Good night, guys.
Good night. Thank you, guys. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Stay on, Cindi.